the purpose of the Historic District Commission is to protect the historic integrity, in my view, is to protect the historic integrity, the historic architectural integrity of Chestertown. Chestertown is an extraordinarily beautiful community with a huge inventory of historic buildings. We are a National Historic District, so there are standards that we are obligated to meet to help our community meet. By that I mean applicants. And there are guidelines that exist that, to help homeowners understand what their responsibilities are should they own a house in the historic district or want to build a house in the historic district. Well, I want to first, by way of background, say that there are a few things I do in town that mean more to me than my service on HDC. I am a preservationist. I am a developer of historic properties. I have an understanding of what historic buildings mean to the communities in which they are located. And I think I also, as a developer, have an understanding of how to appropriately make modifications, how to appropriately deal with new construction and renovations and modifications to historic buildings. Having said that, so that was by way of preface, I think that in general, over the last 2.5 years, I would say that the work of the commission has remained the same. I think how people understand what we do has changed a great deal. And I think that is the source of, that's really challenging, I think, both for us as a community and for the commission. I don't think that our process, I think in general, our applicants come into HDC with an understanding of what's required. I think, when you buy a house here or when you try to renovate a house here, I would assume you are either given or can access the historic district guidelines, which lay out everything from materiality to massing to fences to sheds to all manner of things that one might want to do, up to and including demolition and new construction. So it has not been my experience that we have had a great many applicants come before us who don't understand what they are required to do. I think that it's fair to say that there are different and varying, and I think this is true for every commission, there are varying interpretations of what the guidelines are. There are varying understandings of the meaning of particular pieces of the guidelines, but I don't think, over my time on the commission, that piece of it hasn't changed a whole lot. I think I still as a commissioner endeavor to help applicants understand their responsibilities and help them meet their obligations, whether often that's through education, by just going through things with people. And my definition of effective is that we continue to have a thriving historic district that is able to evolve and change over time, yet still remain within the essential framework of the guidelines in the district itself. We do our work, I as a commissioner do my work in an atmosphere of full transparency. Our meetings are always open to the public. The agendas are posted online. There are ways for the general public to learn about issues that are before the commission. But in general, I think the bulk of what we do is our single homes or their signs or their roofs or their solar or their whatever, their very specific issues that don't really, I hesitate to use the word matter, but may not be as important to the general public as they are to the applicant. I hope I parsed that correctly, because I think that one of the other really wonderful features of our community is that by and large, people who live here care a great deal about preserving the historic district and about the integrity of the historic district. And I think that that is a good thing. I think that the more people who care about something, the better. But I think the other thing that I think is really important is that if a citizen or an individual or a home buyer or an advocate, if any interested party in our community has a question about our process, the guidelines are available for you to review. And I think that that's a helpful place to start. I also think it's important that when people are presenting their viewpoints, to which they are fully entitled, that be understood by our community as the opinion of the presenter, not necessarily as statements of fact, because they may not have all of the information, and they are not, they may not have all the facts. And I think that we have a lot of talented, interesting, creative people in our community who have lots of opinions, who are, pleased to express them, and I count myself among them on issues of concern. But I think that it's really important to be well informed and to understand the difference between someone who is presenting their opinion as a professional, which is different from a professional opinion.
As someone whose mom is from here, so I started coming here when I was 7 for the summers. I've lived here full-time since 2009. My perspective of town is really long, right? So my mom's family's been here for more than 300 years, before there was a town. So my lens of change is really long. And even from when I was a child, we've had different economic waves, we've had different sorts of people interested in moving here, and those waves leave their mark in some way, shape, or form. And the formation of the historic district and its first guidelines was limited, right, mainly to this core of downtown, and their guidelines were very prescriptive. I think they even specified what colors you could paint shutters. It was really tight. And then those guidelines got revised. I want to say the ones we use now are 2012 is when they got refreshed. And they are really great. As somebody who worked on ASHRAE 90.1, which is the basis for the IECC, International Energy Conservation Code, I've done code writing, standard writing before. And our guidelines have that level of professionalism. They give you space for applying a notion, an idea to a structure, as opposed to saying everything has to be brick. It says, look at the materials around you and keep it within context. As opposed to saying every structure must not exceed this number of feet. It says horizontal linearity is really important to creating the rhythms of our town that gives us that fabric, that feel. So there's a lot in the guidelines that I wouldn't change at all. It keeps pace. It's part of my preparation when I come in after I've looked at someone's application. I go back through the guidelines for every application, for every thought. Someone's changing their roof line. They want to modify their porch. And I look at those relevant sections, and 9.8 times out of 10, it's supported in there. There's guidance that works. And then when they go and they make the modification and I go back by and I look at what they've done, it works. It has that rhythm and cadence that we intuitively know that we like about our historic streets. Where the guidelines, I think, are a touch weak and could use a little more specificity is for the properties that were annexed to the historic district over near the middle school. That zone was added much later, and their original materials and original designs vary pretty significantly from the downtown district. So they're not as effectively supported. So on those applications, the commission is having to really discuss and come to consensus. So there are 7 of us, and we all have different professional backgrounds. People came to Chestertown for different reasons at different times, and what they bring to the commission is themselves. The one thing we all have in common is that everybody does a lot of preparation, and everyone has their own opinion, which is great. I mentioned that earlier, that we don't always agree. And that's something that I was really pleasantly surprised to find. It means that 7 people are thinking, 7 people are using their experience, their knowledge, their research to cast their vote, to support or not support a particular application. It is intriguing to be a commissioner and to have some meetings where no one in the public is concerned or engaged. So, and that's typical, right? We typically go in and the applicants are there and we're all there and we sort of go through and everyone gets what they need. And, but then there are some issues that really galvanize public interest, and I like discussion. And the best thing about Chestertown is that we all care about Chestertown. That's what this community is made of. I think that's actually more important than what the community looks like. It's how we feel about it. So maybe some folks are concerned, you know, that the process isn't rigorous enough, or that their voice isn't heard, or, you know, or they're just wanting to get overly informed, so they come and they sit in. I think it's great. I do regret when the emotions run high and the professionalism of the meeting breaks down, but
yeah, it's the nature of.
But that's, you know, that's because people care a lot. People have always cared a lot in this town.
Yeah.
So the authority rests in the town ordinance that we as residents passed years ago. The guidelines support that ordinance. We use the guidelines to support the will of the town and the ordinance, right? So that's, I think, a point of confusion sometimes. I mean, to be a volunteer commissioner is not a position of power. It's an administrative role, right? But to answer your question, of course. The process for a complex application that requires multiple hearings, part of that time in between the hearings and during subsequent hearings is us commissioners doing more research and doing more thinking and studying. And so it's not us granting partial approval. There's no such thing. It's an open process until a vote. So an application can be open-ended for many hearings. And until we call a vote, no decisions are made. There's no presumption of anything. Well, and it keeps us comfortable because there is that sense of time pressure when you're in there, right? And you want to be respectful of the applicant's time, but if it's a complex application and we've just heard testimony and input, and if you're me, I've come in with 20 questions and I've just gotten the answers to that, I need to go away and digest. and sit with it and go look again at the site and go through the application another 3 to 5 times and come up with my next round of questions. Because when something is significant, when it really matters to town, it's worth it. So I am very interested in what public commenters have to say. It's why whenever there's someone standing up offering an additional comment, I'm typing because I'm taking notes. And what they say is sometimes what matters to the application, but sometimes what gets said is more about their concern, their fear, their wonderment than directly impacts the application. Sometimes what a commenter brings doesn't touch the commission's scope at all. And we listen, but that doesn't come into play in our decisions. It does take care and mindfulness to not get wrapped up in the moment and think everybody is, oh my gosh, that person said this, well then that matters. Take it all in, go back away, digest, and see how much of it is actually relevant. And there are issues raised in public comments that inform questions for subsequent hearings when applicable, when it's in scope, when it's relevant material, certainly for applications. I mean, it's why that public process is so valuable. It's a gift, in a way, to get to help people who live in town, who own a building in town, who are ready to make a modification, to be a service to them, for them to come in and share what they're up to. We have the ability to share what other people have recently done with success, or to share what some people have tried that has not been successful that might save an applicant a little bit of time, a little bit of head scratching. What I really hope is that it makes them feel like a part of a community. Like, we're all in this together, keeping these buildings together, right? I've said this often, like, these buildings are old and they're still being refit, modified to keep up with life as we're living it today. And that is what's amazing. You go to colonial Williamsburg and the old buildings are not housing modern families. They are not housing a modern bakery. But in Chestertown, we're making that work. And it's because of this collaborative process. So I would hope that people would, this is never going to happen, but I'm still going to say it, that they would look forward to their meeting. Look forward to the chance to come in and pick our brains and get as much as they can out of it. And know that I'm excited to see them. I'm excited to know that another building is being loved around on in our town.